"If you don't take this, I'll never forgive myself," whispered the CEO, her hands trembling as she placed the small wooden box on the cleaning cart. "Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you." The morning sun cast long shadows across the marble floors of Harrison Financial Tower as Maria Santos pushed her cleaning cart down the empty executive hallway. At 62, she had spent the last 15 years maintaining the pristine offices on the 42nd floor, invisible to most who walked these halls. Her weathered hands gripped the cart handle tightly, the same hands that had scrubbed countless surfaces while dreaming of a different life for her granddaughter. Victoria Harrison stood behind the floor-to-ceiling windows of her corner office, watching the city wake up below. As CEO of one of the nation's largest investment firms, she commanded respect in boardrooms across the country. But today, something gnawed at her chest, a weight that no amount of success could lift. Her perfectly manicured fingers traced the edge of a small photograph on her desk, one that few people had ever seen. The photograph showed a young woman with bright eyes and a radiant smile wearing a graduation cap. Victoria's sister, Elena, had been everything Victoria wasn't: warm, selfless, devoted to helping others. Elena had chosen to become a teacher instead of following the family path into finance, a decision that had created a rift between the sisters that Victoria deeply regretted. The car accident 3 years ago had stolen any chance for reconciliation, leaving Victoria with only memories and a crushing sense of unfinished business. Maria knocked softly on the office door, as she did every morning at precisely 7:30. Victoria barely looked up from her computer screen, offering only a brief nod of acknowledgment. This had been their routine for years, polite but distant, employer and employee separated by invisible barriers of class and circumstance. What Victoria didn't know was that Maria had her own hidden story. Before immigrating to America 20 years ago, she had been a respected nurse in the Philippines, caring for patients with the same gentle touch she now used to dust furniture and vacuum floors. The transition to cleaning offices had been necessary for survival, but it had never diminished her natural instinct to care for others. Maria had noticed changes in Victoria over the past few months. The CEO, who once commanded meetings with unwavering confidence, now seemed distracted, often staring out the window with a distant expression. There were nights when Maria would return to retrieve forgotten supplies and find Victoria still at her desk, long after everyone else had gone home. The wastebasket would be filled with crumpled tissues, evidence of tears shed in solitude. One evening, as Maria emptied the trash, she discovered something that made her pause. Mixed among the discarded papers was a hospital bracelet with Elena Harrison's name on it. Maria's heart clenched as she recognized the familiar weight of grief, having lost her own daughter years ago in a tragic accident back home. She carefully placed the bracelet back among the papers, but the image stayed with her. Days passed, and Maria found herself paying closer attention to Victoria's demeanor. She noticed how the CEO's hands would shake slightly during phone calls, how she would sometimes stop mid-sentence and stare at nothing. Maria recognized these signs from her nursing days, the telltale indicators of someone carrying an unbearable emotional burden. The breakthrough came on a rainy Thursday morning when Maria arrived to find Victoria slumped over her desk, having apparently spent the entire night in the office. Scattered around her were medical bills, legal documents, and photographs of Elena. Victoria's usually immaculate appearance was disheveled, her designer suit wrinkled from sleeping in the chair. Maria approached quietly, her nurturing instincts overriding protocol. She gently placed a hand on Victoria's shoulder, causing the younger woman to startle awake. For a moment their eyes met, and Maria saw past the corporate facade to the broken person underneath. "Miss Harrison," Maria said softly, her accented English warm with concern. "You cannot continue like this. Your body needs rest. Your heart needs healing." Victoria's defenses crumbled in that instant. Tears she had held back for months spilled freely as she looked into Maria's compassionate eyes. "I can't forgive myself," Victoria whispered. "My sister died thinking I didn't love her. We fought about everything. Money, family, choices. I was so proud, so stubborn. Now she's gone, and I can never tell her I was wrong." Maria listened without judgment, her presence offering the kind of comfort Victoria hadn't experienced since childhood. Grief is love with nowhere to go. Maria said gently. Your sister. She knew you loved her. Sometimes we show love in the wrong ways, but the love itself is never wrong. From that morning forward, something shifted between them. Victoria began arriving earlier, timing her schedule to overlap with Maria's cleaning routine. Their conversation started with simple pleasantries, but gradually deepened into meaningful exchanges about life, loss, and the courage required to heal. Maria shared stories of her granddaughter Carmen, a brilliant 15-year-old who dreamed of becoming a doctor, but whose path seemed blocked by financial constraints. Victoria found herself genuinely interested in Carmen's progress, asking about her grades and aspirations with the same intensity she once reserved for quarterly reports. As weeks passed, Victoria learned more about Maria's sacrifices. The older woman sent most of her earnings back to the Philippines to support her extended family, while living in a tiny apartment and walking miles to work to save on transportation costs. Despite these hardships, Maria never complained, instead focusing on gratitude for the opportunities America had provided. The revelation came during one of their morning conversations, when Maria mentioned that Carmen had been accepted to a prestigious pre-med program but would have to decline due to the overwhelming costs. Victoria's heart ached as she recognized Elena's passion for education reflected in this young girl she had never met. That night, Victoria sat in her office long after Maria had gone home, staring at the wooden box she kept locked in her desk drawer. Inside were Elena's most precious possessions, her teaching awards, letters from grateful students, and the scholarship fund documentation Elena had been working on before her death. Elena had dreamed of creating opportunities for underprivileged students, a vision that died with her. Victoria realized that fate had placed Maria in her path for a reason. This wasn't just about helping one family. It was about honoring Elena's memory and finally finding a way to channel her guilt into something meaningful. The next morning brought unexpected complications. Victoria's business rival, Marcus Rothwell, had somehow learned about her growing friendship with Maria and saw an opportunity to undermine her leadership. Whispers began circulating through the office about Victoria's inappropriate relationship with the cleaning staff, with some suggesting she was losing her edge as a CEO. The situation escalated when several board members called an emergency meeting to discuss concerns about Victoria's recent behavior. They questioned her judgment, citing reports of her spending excessive time in conversation with a maid instead of focusing on company business. The pressure was immense, with some calling for her resignation. Victoria felt the familiar walls closing in, the same way they had during her conflicts with Elena. The easy solution would be to distance herself from Maria, to return to the cold professionalism that had defined her career. But as she sat in the boardroom facing accusatory stares, she thought about Elena's unwavering commitment to her principles, even when it meant family conflict. Instead of backing down, Victoria stood her ground. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now, back to the story.
Addressed the board with quiet dignity, explaining that her interactions with all employees, regardless of their position, reflected the company's stated values of respect and integrity. Her words carried weight because they were backed by years of stellar performance and unwavering dedication to the firm's success. The immediate crisis passed, but Victoria knew the scrutiny would continue. She also knew that her plan to help Carmen would now be seen through the lens of potential scandal. The corporate world she had mastered suddenly felt like a minefield where any misstep could explode into career-ending gossip. Maria, unaware of the office politics swirling around their friendship, continued to provide the emotional support Victoria desperately needed. Their conversations became a lifeline for both women. Maria found intellectual stimulation and genuine respect she had missed for years, while Victoria discovered the healing power of authentic human connection. One evening, as autumn painted the city in golden hues, Victoria made her decision. She carefully placed Elena's scholarship fund documents, along with additional paperwork she had prepared, into the small wooden box that had held her sister's memory. With trembling hands, she added a personal letter explaining her intentions and a check that would cover not only Carmen's education, but establish a permanent scholarship fund in Elena's name. The next morning, Maria arrived to find the wooden box sitting prominently on her cleaning cart. A simple note was attached. for Carmen's future and Elena's memory. Please don't refuse this gift. It's as much for me as it is for your granddaughter. Maria opened the box with careful reverence, her eyes widening as she processed the contents. The scholarship documents showed a fund worth over $2 million, enough to support Carmen's entire medical education and provide opportunities for dozens of other students. But it was Victoria's handwritten letter that brought tears to her eyes. The letter spoke of redemption, of second chances, of finding family in unexpected places. Victoria wrote about how Maria's kindness had saved her from drowning in grief and guilt. She explained that helping Carmen wasn't charity. It was a privilege, a chance to honor Elena's memory while building a legacy of hope. Maria's tears flowed freely as she realized the magnitude of what Victoria had done. This wasn't just financial support. It was validation of every sacrifice Maria had made, recognition of Carmen's potential, and a bridge between two worlds that rarely intersected with such profound meaning. When Victoria arrived at the office that morning, she found Maria waiting in her doorway, the wooden box clutched to her chest. The older woman's eyes were red from crying, but her smile radiated pure joy. Without words, Maria stepped forward and embraced Victoria, a gesture that shattered the last barriers between them. "This is too much," Maria whispered through her tears. "I cannot accept such generosity." Victoria held her tightly, her own tears flowing freely. "Elena always said that love multiplies when it's shared. You've given me more than you know, Maria. You've helped me find my way back to the person my sister believed I could be." The news of Victoria's scholarship fund spread through the company, but instead of scandal, it generated admiration. Employees who had once seen their CEO as distant and intimidating began to view her with new respect. The board, initially skeptical, found themselves praising Victoria's initiative when local media picked up the story and cast the company in an overwhelmingly positive light. Carmen's acceptance of the scholarship marked the beginning of a new chapter for all three women. Victoria became deeply involved in the scholarship program, personally mentoring recipients and establishing partnerships with other educational institutions. The work gave her a sense of purpose that had been missing from her corporate achievements. Maria's role evolved as well. Victoria recognized her natural leadership abilities and offered her a position coordinating the
scholarship program. Maria's understanding of struggle and sacrifice made her uniquely qualified to identify deserving candidates and provide the kind of support that went beyond financial assistance. The transformation wasn't without challenges. Some members of Victoria's social circle questioned her choices, unable to understand how a successful CEO could find fulfillment in helping a maid's granddaughter. The criticism stung, but Victoria had learned to value authentic relationships over superficial approval. Months later, Carmen sent her first letter from medical school, describing her classes and expressing gratitude for the opportunity to pursue her dreams. She wrote about her grandmother's pride and her own determination to honor the trust placed in her. The letter arrived on the anniversary of Elena's death, and Victoria saw it as a sign that her sister's spirit lived on through acts of compassion and hope. The wooden box now sat in a place of honor in Victoria's office, no longer hidden in a drawer, but displayed where visitors could see it. It had become a symbol of transformation, proof that healing was possible when people had the courage to lower their defenses and connect authentically with others. Victoria's leadership style changed as well. She began implementing programs that recognized the humanity of every employee, regardless of their position in the company hierarchy. The cleaning staff, security guards, and cafeteria workers found themselves included in company communications and appreciation events that had previously been reserved for executives. Maria's influence extended far beyond her original role. She became Victoria's confidant and advisor, offering perspectives shaped by decades of observing human nature from the margins of corporate life. Her insights proved invaluable in helping Victoria make decisions that considered not just profit margins but human impact. The scholarship fund grew as other executives and wealthy donors learned about the program. What had started as Victoria's personal attempt at redemption became a movement that touched hundreds of lives. Students from backgrounds similar to Carmen's found pathways to careers in medicine, engineering, education, and other fields that had previously seemed beyond their reach. Years passed, And Carmen excelled in her studies, maintaining the academic performance that had first caught Victoria's attention. She sent regular updates, sharing not just her achievements but her evolving understanding of the sacrifice and support that had made her success possible. Her letters often mentioned her grandmother's wisdom and Victoria's example of using privilege responsibly. The relationship between Victoria and Maria deepened into something resembling family. Victoria included Maria in holiday celebrations and important company events, while Maria continued to provide the emotional grounding that kept Victoria connected to what truly mattered. Their friendship became legendary within the company, a testament to the power of genuine human connection. The wooden box that had started this journey remained central to their story. Victoria would often touch it during difficult meetings, drawing strength from the memory of Elena's idealism and Maria's unwavering faith in human goodness. It served as a tangible reminder that the most important decisions weren't about profit or prestige, but about the legacy one chose to leave behind. As the story spread through business circles and social media, Victoria found herself invited to speak at conferences about leadership and social responsibility. She always brought the wooden box with her, using it to illustrate how a simple act of courage, placing trust in another person's heart, had transformed not just individual lives but an entire corporate culture. The impact rippled outward in ways Victoria had never anticipated. Other companies began implementing similar programs, recognizing that investing in employee welfare and community development created stronger, more sustainable businesses. The model Victoria and Maria had created became a template for authentic corporate social responsibility. Carmen's graduation from medical school marked a milestone that brought all three women together for a celebration that felt like the completion of a circle. The young woman who had once seemed destined for a life limited by circumstance now stood ready to heal others, carrying forward the legacy of compassion that had made her success possible. At the graduation ceremony, Carmen delivered a speech that brought tears to hundreds of eyes. She spoke about her grandmother's sacrifices, Victoria's belief in potential over pedigree, and the power of unexpected friendships to change the trajectory of lives. The wooden box sat prominently on the stage, representing the courage required to trust in human goodness. Victoria realized that the grief that had once threatened to consume her had been transformed into something beautiful and lasting. Elena's memory lived on not in regret and recrimination, but in the lives touched by the scholarship fund and the countless acts of kindness inspired by their story. The final chapter of their journey began when Carmen, now Dr. Carmen Santos, returned to work in a clinic serving immigrant communities. Her first patient was an elderly cleaning woman who reminded her of Maria, and Carmen understood that the circle of compassion would continue expanding through her own choices and actions. The wooden box still sits in Victoria's office, but its meaning has evolved. It no longer holds the pain of unfinished business but the joy of purposeful living. Visitors often ask about its significance, and Victoria shares the story of how a simple gesture of trust between two women from different worlds created ripples of hope that continue spreading today. Maria, now in her 70s, serves as the director of the Elena Harrison Scholarship Foundation, a role that has given her life new meaning and purpose. She often tells people that her years of cleaning offices were preparation for the more important work of cleaning hearts, removing the barriers that prevent people from seeing each other's humanity. The foundation has grown beyond anyone's original vision, supporting not just individual students but entire communities. Programs include mentorship, family support services, and partnerships with schools in underserved areas. The wooden box has become the foundation's symbol, representing the power of small gestures to create profound change. Victoria's transformation from a grief-stricken executive to a purposeful leader inspired others in her industry to examine their own priorities. The business world, often criticized for its focus on profit over people, found an example of how success could be redefined to include social impact and human connection. As the sun sets on this remarkable story, the wooden box continues to serve its purpose, not as a container for memories of what was lost, but as a symbol of what can be found when people have the courage to bridge the divides that separate them. The tears Maria shed when she first opened it have been replaced by countless tears of joy from students, families, and communities touched by the compassion it represents. The legacy lives on in every scholarship recipient who goes on to help others, in every corporate leader who chooses humanity over hierarchy, and in every person who remembers that the most powerful gifts aren't material possessions but acts of faith in human potential. The wooden box that once held one woman's grief now contains the hopes and dreams of countless others. proving that even the smallest gestures of kindness can create waves of change that reach far beyond what we can imagine. The years that followed Carmen's graduation brought unexpected developments that deepened the bond between the three women even further. Victoria had assumed that Carmen's success marked the natural conclusion of their extraordinary journey, but life had other plans that would test their relationships in ways none of them could have anticipated. Dr. Carmen Santos established her practice in the heart of the city's immigrant district, choosing to work in a community clinic rather than pursue the lucrative private practice opportunities that her prestigious education could have afforded. Her decision puzzled some of her medical school classmates, but Victoria and Maria understood immediately. Carmen was choosing to honor the values that had shaped her upbringing rather than simply chase financial success. The clinic where Carmen worked served families much like her own, hard-working immigrants who often held multiple jobs to make ends meet. Parents who sacrificed their own needs to provide opportunities for their children, and elderly grandparents who carried the wisdom of their cultures while adapting to an unfamiliar world. Carmen found herself treating not just medical conditions, but the stress and anxiety that came with navigating life in a new country. Victoria began visiting the clinic regularly, initially to see how Carmen was adapting to her new role, but increasingly because she found the environment both humbling and inspiring. The patients treated her with polite curiosity, unaware that the woman in the simple clothes and comfortable shoes was one of the most powerful executives in the city. Victoria cherished this anonymity, finding peace in being seen simply as Carmen's friend rather than as a corporate leader. During one of these visits, Victoria encountered a situation that would reshape her understanding of her own purpose once again. A young mother named Isabella had brought her 8-year-old son Miguel to the clinic with what appeared to be routine cold symptoms. But Carmen's trained eye detected signs that suggested something more serious might be developing. After examining Miguel, Carmen recommended additional tests that the family's insurance wouldn't cover. The child needed specialized cardiac evaluation that could cost thousands of dollars, money the family simply didn't have. Isabella worked 3 cleaning jobs while her husband labored in construction, but their combined income barely covered rent and basic necessities. Victoria watched from the waiting room as Carmen gently explained the situation to Isabella, whose face crumpled with the weight of impossible choices. The scene triggered memories of her own childhood, when Elena had needed medical treatment that their family initially struggled to afford. Victoria remembered her parents, whispered conversations about money, the stress that had filled their home during those uncertain weeks. Without hesitation, Victoria approached the family and quietly arranged to cover all of Miguel's medical expenses. But this wasn't simply a wealthy person writing a check to solve a problem. Victoria insisted on understanding every aspect of the situation, learning about the family's circumstances, and finding ways to provide support that went beyond immediate financial assistance. The experience opened Victoria's eyes to systemic problems that couldn't be solved with individual acts of charity, no matter how generous. She began researching healthcare access issues in immigrant communities, discovering that Miguel's situation was far from unique. Thousands of families faced similar impossible choices between financial survival and their children's health. Maria, drawing on her nursing background, became Victoria's guide to understanding these healthcare challenges from a practical perspective. She explained how cultural barriers, language difficulties, and fear of authority often prevented families from seeking medical care until problems became critical. Her insights helped Victoria recognize that effective solutions required addressing not just financial obstacles, but also cultural and systemic barriers. The 3 women began meeting regularly to discuss how they might expand their impact beyond individual scholarships to address broader community needs. These conversations took place in Maria's modest apartment, a setting that grounded their discussions in the reality of the lives they hoped to improve. Victoria found these gatherings more meaningful than any corporate boardroom meeting she had ever attended. Their brainstorming sessions led to the creation of a comprehensive community health initiative that would complement the existing scholarship program. The Elena Community Health Center would provide affordable medical care while also serving as a training site for scholarship recipients pursuing careers in healthcare. The center would employ bilingual staff and implement culturally sensitive practices designed to make immigrant families feel welcome and understood. The project required significant fundraising beyond Victoria's personal resources, challenging her to leverage her business network in new ways. She organized elegant fundraising galas, where corporate leaders rubbed shoulders with community activists, creating unlikely partnerships between worlds that rarely intersected. Maria often attended these events as an honored guest, her presence serving as a powerful reminder of why the work mattered. Carmen played a crucial role in designing the health center's services, drawing on her clinical experience to identify the most pressing needs in the community. She proposed innovative programs like mobile health clinics that could reach families unable to travel to the main facility, and health education workshops conducted in multiple languages to help families navigate the complex American healthcare system. The fundraising campaign attracted attention from national media outlets, who were intrigued by the story of a Fortune 500 CEO working closely with a former cleaning lady to address healthcare inequities. The coverage brought both praise and criticism, with some questioning Victoria's motives and others suggesting that such initiatives should be government responsibilities rather than private charity. Victoria found herself defending not just the health center project, but the entire philosophy behind her transformation from profit-focused executive to socially conscious leader. In television interviews and newspaper profiles, she spoke candidly about how grief had initially paralyzed her, but ultimately led to a deeper understanding of what constituted meaningful success. The criticism stung, particularly attacks that characterized her work as a publicity stunt designed to enhance her corporate image. Victoria struggled with self-doubt, wondering if her critics might be right about her motivations. During these difficult moments, Maria's unwavering support proved invaluable, reminding Victoria that the lives they had already touched provided the clearest evidence of their work's authenticity. The health center's groundbreaking ceremony brought together an unlikely assembly of dignitaries, community leaders, and local families. Carmen delivered the keynote address, speaking eloquently about the ripple effects of compassion and the responsibility that comes with privilege. Her words resonated with the diverse audience, many of whom saw their own struggles reflected in her family's journey. Miguel, the young boy whose medical needs had inspired the health center's creation, participated in the ribbon-cutting ceremony alongside Victoria, Maria, and Carmen. His recovery had been complete, and he had become something of a local celebrity as the face of the initiative. His presence reminded everyone that behind the policy discussions and fundraising campaigns were real children whose futures hung in the balance. The health center's opening marked the beginning of a new phase in the relationship between Victoria, Maria, and Carmen. They were no longer just three women connected by an act of individual generosity, but leaders of a movement that was attracting attention from other cities and inspiring similar initiatives across the country. The wooden box that had started their journey now resided in the health center's lobby, displayed alongside photos and stories from the families they served. As the center's operations expanded, Victoria made the difficult decision to step back from some of her corporate responsibilities to focus more fully on the foundation's work. The move surprised many in the business world, who couldn't understand why a successful CEO would voluntarily reduce her influence in favor of nonprofit work. Victoria's decision reflected her evolved understanding of legacy and impact, prioritizing sustainable change over immediate profit. Maria's role continued to evolve as well, transforming from program coordinator to community liaison, and eventually to assistant director of the foundation. Her ability to connect with families facing desperate circumstances made her invaluable in identifying needs and developing appropriate responses. The woman who had once cleaned office buildings now found herself consulting with healthcare policy experts and government officials. Carmen's medical practice flourished as she balanced her clinical responsibilities with her growing role as a spokesperson for healthcare equity. Medical schools began inviting her to speak about her path from potential poverty to professional success, using her story to inspire other first-generation college students pursuing healthcare careers. Her presentations always included acknowledgment of Victoria and Maria, emphasizing that her achievements reflected collective effort rather than individual brilliance. The success of the health center attracted attention from pharmaceutical companies and medical device manufacturers who wanted to partner with the foundation. Victoria approached these opportunities with careful consideration, determined to maintain the center's mission focus while leveraging corporate resources effectively. She had learned to navigate the complex intersection of business interests and social impact without compromising her values. International recognition followed as healthcare organizations in other countries expressed interest in replicating the community health center model. Victoria found herself traveling to conferences around the world, sharing insights about public-private partnerships and the importance of community input in designing effective healthcare interventions. These speaking engagements represented a far cry from her previous corporate presentations, focusing on human impact rather than quarterly earnings. The Foundation's expansion brought new challenges, as Victoria, Maria, and Carmen worked to maintain their personal connection while managing an increasingly complex organization. They instituted regular retreats where they could step away from administrative responsibilities and reconnect with their original motivations. These gatherings often took place at Maria's apartment, preserving the intimate setting where their most important conversations had begun. As Carmen established herself as a prominent voice in community healthcare, she began receiving offers from prestigious hospitals and research institutions. The opportunities represented significant career advancement and financial rewards, testing her commitment to the community clinic where she had started her practice. Victoria and Maria supported Carmen's right to pursue whatever path felt most fulfilling, while privately hoping she would choose to continue their collaborative work. The decision weighed heavily on Carmen, as she considered her grandmother's sacrifices and Victoria's investment in her education. She ultimately chose to remain with the community clinic while accepting a teaching appointment at the local medical school, a compromise that allowed her to expand her impact while staying true to her values. The decision reflected the influence of the two women who had shaped her understanding of success and responsibility. Victoria's personal life had been transformed as profoundly as her professional identity. The corporate social events that had once filled her calendar seemed hollow compared to the community celebrations and family gatherings that now marked her important moments. She found herself building genuine friendships with people from backgrounds she had never previously encountered, relationships that enriched her understanding of the world beyond corporate boardrooms. The wooden box continued to serve as a touchstone for all three women, representing not just their shared history but their ongoing commitment to each other and their community. Victoria had commissioned a replica for the Foundation's offices, ensuring that the symbol of their unlikely friendship would remain visible to everyone who entered their workspace. The original box stayed in her personal office, a daily reminder of the transformation that had begun with a simple act of courage. Years later, as Victoria approached retirement age, she began planning for the Foundation's future leadership. Carmen had emerged as the natural choice to lead the organization, bringing both medical expertise and deep community connections to the role. Maria, now in her late 70s, expressed interest in focusing more on direct service while reducing her administrative responsibilities. The transition planning process revealed how thoroughly their lives had become intertwined beyond their professional collaboration. Victoria had named Carmen as the beneficiary of her personal Foundation assets, while Maria had moved into a cottage on Victoria's property, creating an informal family structure that defied conventional categories. Their relationship had evolved into something that transcended friendship, mentor-mentee dynamics, or even chosen family bonds. The Elena Harrison Foundation's 10th anniversary celebration brought together hundreds of scholarship recipients, health center patients, and community supporters, in a testament to the ripple effects of their original wooden box gesture. Former patients spoke about lives saved and health restored, while scholarship recipients shared stories of careers launched and dreams achieved. The event demonstrated how individual acts of compassion could generate systematic change when sustained over time. As the celebration concluded, Victoria, Maria, and Carmen found themselves alone in the health center lobby, standing before the display case that held the wooden box and photos from their journey together. The moment felt both like an ending and a beginning, acknowledging how far they had traveled while recognizing the work that remained ahead. The wooden box that had once contained Elena's memories and Victoria's guilt now symbolized hope, possibility, and the enduring power of human connection. Their story had become part of the community's collective memory, inspiring other unlikely partnerships and demonstrating that meaningful change often begins with simple gestures of trust between people willing to see beyond surface differences. In the quiet of that evening, surrounded by evidence of lives transformed and communities strengthened, the three women understood that their greatest achievement wasn't the foundation, the health center, or even the individual successes they had facilitated. Their greatest achievement was proving that authentic relationships could bridge any divide, and that love, when expressed through sustained action, possessed the power to reshape entire communities. The legacy of the wooden box would continue long after their individual stories concluded, carried forward by the hundreds of people whose lives had been touched by their courage to trust in human goodness and their commitment to translating that trust into tangible change. Their journey from strangers separated by class and circumstance to family united by purpose demonstrated that the most powerful transformations often begin with the smallest acts of faith in each other's hearts. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.